You were touching on the anti-pass campaign and
Yeah.
the impact on society, and particularly the growth and the forward trajectory of the African National Congress.
Yeah.
Would you?
Of course, the anti-pass campaign of 1960, ANC was preparing a massive campaign. Tebogo had led the breakaway from the ANC. They leaped in ahead of the ANC. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? In politics, there's always rivalries. And my argument is you cannot demand hegemony, control. You have to win it through proper policies and explanations and winning the support of people. And there was a clear issue here. I have to say, at the time, having the Freedom Charter and this long tradition from 1943, the ANC Youth League, African Claims Document, Freedom Charter, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and PAC saying, no, Africa belongs to African people. But what does this do to the Youth League and their African claims saying all people have equal rights? That's what essentially came out of World War II with President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill of England saying the war aims are the end of colonialism and equality of all people, which leads to we want that for us. The intellectuals, Mda, Lembedi, Sisulu, Mandela, Tambo, and so many others. But it becomes a very Africanist thing until clearly there's an intellectual tension. If you say everybody's equal, how can you say only for black people? Are colored people black? Are white people people? Are we going to turn it around upside down? And so gradually the trend becomes towards the Congress of the people. South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And you know, Congress of the People, we organized 10,000 meetings, at least 10,000 meetings, where people were asked to say, what do you want in a future South Africa? I lost my job working in Simonstown location because I worked for the railways, government employee. How can you work against apartheid? But people wrote down what they wanted to see. I saw the bits of paper. Thousands and thousands in cardboard boxes. It wasn't written by a few intellectuals. It really came from our people. And it said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. But the PAC leadership said no. And the story, I believe, because Benjamin Pogrund and others, whites, were involved there, was they were getting support from the US Embassy. Why? Or consulate. Why? Because anything against the ANC was very good for the Americans, because the ANC had a relationship with the Communist Party and PAC was against, because the Communist Party believed in non-racism. So this was the politics around the PAC jumping in first. But it doesn't matter now in history, because what it led to was the Sharpeville massacre, you see, which was a turning point in our history. Because our people then, you know, there was the treason trial going on at the time, because the Freedom Charter was said to be high. You want democracy, that's high treason in South Africa at the time. And so there was the 4-year trial, the treason trial, 156 people arrested, released bit by bit until in 1961 they found not guilty. But the leadership was locked up together during the state of emergency after Sharpeville, and they were in plenary session. But they weren't allowed to meet because they were banned and not allowed to meet with each other. And so they were able to talk politics. And so you had Moses Katani next to Luthuli, Katani Luthuli, KL, until Chief Luthuli later would say, I want to know what the workers' representative says. I want to see Comrade Moses Katani, communist and African nationalist. I mean, the government made a huge mistake. They put people together who planned the future. And at the same time, after Sharpeville, people generally were saying, we have to take up arms, we're going to kill whites. That was the answer, indiscriminately. But our leadership said, no, that's not politics. But it creates, terrorism creates bitterness. We have to take control, and that leads to the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe. But it took a year of discussion to persuade people. Now, there's some American theologians who say Chief Luthuli could never have accepted the armed struggle. He was a Christian, he didn't believe in violence, and so on. But I know that he did, because I was told he did. But there's Blanche Luguma from Cape Town, Coloured People's Congress, wife of Alex Luguma. She goes up to see Luthuli with a delegation. And he says, it's reached a point where if you want to do it, you have to do it. He accepted it. And in a quite famous book by the Reverend Charles Hooper, Let My People Go, he is quoted as saying, when the chickens are being stolen, should my people stand by and let it happen? In other words, there are times when you have to do things you don't want to do. And there's the quotation from him at Lily's Leaf Museum. Nobody can blame just men for taking up arms if the purpose is to achieve peace and racial harmony, words to that effect. So he'd become reconciled to it, but it took a long time to persuade him and many others. Moses Kutani was not happy about it. He thought there was room for more political activity. But the discussions took place and a decision was reached.
And when such decisions are
And
reached,
I have to say, for me personally, the idea of taking up arms is not an easy one, even though my heroes were those who fought behind the Nazi lines for freedom. Because people are going to die, mainly your own people, because the state is very powerfully organized. Intelligence services, trained soldiers, police, detectives. We don't have any of that. You know, we've got the mass of people. But how does Denis disappear in the mass of the people? I can't. But nevertheless, you have to do it. And so, in the end, the call is for the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe, where I meet with Fred Carnison on a bench outside the Zico National Museum in the gardens in Cape Town. We're feeding squirrels, and he asks me to join, and I say yes. He says, but think about it. I said, but you've now been arguing for this for a year already. So what's there to think about? Well, what about your family? Well, what about my family? What about the kids who are dying? What about people who get murdered?